This routine doesn't do a lot of arm work, but a couple tips about what they are showing. In order to palm the biceps well, oftentimes it's easiest if you make sure you move the client's arm so it's not too close to their body. They might just sort of have themselves positioned like this or like this, and then it's just harder to get good angles to work all the muscles of the arm. So supportively, you can take their arm and their wrist and lift their arm away from their body so that you can basically get to the angles of the biceps and the deeper brachialis. This is kind of similar to working with the calves, only smaller. You can kind of combine your compression with a petrissage stroke called fulling, where you push with the heel and lift with your fingers like you're working with clay. Now, this is a kind of a technique where, depending on your size and their size, you might want to use two hands at a time, or you might want to use one hand at a time. If you want to work with two hands at a time, there's a couple different things you can do. You can just have their arm out to the side so that you can free up both hands, or positionally, what actually works really well is if you support their hand. This can feel too vulnerable or intimate for some clients, so in that case you don't want to do it. But you could actually support their arm between your side and your arm, and that'll actually give you a good grip of their arm. Or you could put their hand on your leg so that their arm is in a comfortable position, but you have access to more of their arm. Is it okay if I put your hand on my leg, Vlad? So that way his arm is out, but I can use both of my hands. I can use them side to side like this, or I can use them side to side like this. And on a 1 to 10 scale, if 7's perfect, where's that at?
6.
And then, of course, the deltoids wrap all the way around the front, all the way around the back, right there to the side. So this is an area that people often skimp on that is really nice to make sure you work with the deltoids. A lot of that shoulder tension translates through the deltoids. They have a big job. Feel free to move their arm more into abduction or more into adduction. You can see the rosiness of the blood coming to the area. Working the anterior deltoid, lateral deltoid. I'm finding it irresistible to not show you some pin and stretch. Similar like we did with the lats, if you start with the arm in a shortened position, grab the muscle and then lengthen the amount of stretch and pressure.
That's pretty good.
Okay. Biggest tricks with pin and stretch is that you start in a shortened position, engage the muscle, and pin the muscle to the bone. Take the muscle with your hand in a stretch direction, which is going to be proximally, and then don't let go. So I have to use quite a bit of force with my hand on his bicep side. And is that good? You want more or less pressure?
A little less.
A little less, sorry. And how's that?
It's perfect.
You can get so much done so quickly with pin and stretch. So you might have noticed I pinned it and stretched it in a couple different spots. You can travel the length of the muscle. Wow, that is so much softer. Do you see that? That was like one technique.
Wow.
It's like happy. And it's red and it's soft. It's pink and it's soft. It's not really red. So with your pin and stretch, you can soften the tissue between each stretch and assess the tissue so that rather than just sort of pinning it once or pinning it randomly, you're going to reassess where it's actually still tight, and you're going to then use that as your next spot to hold. Going to engage the tissue, make sure it's trapped well. Where people usually get this technique wrong is they'll start to move it before they have the muscle stopped. And then you're going to lengthen it. And how's that amount of tension?
Good.
Okay. Shaking the arm, jostling the arm, rocking the arm can help let go of tension, and hitting it on the table as you pull. A lot of our tension patterns in our shoulders jam our shoulders up, so movements that bring the shoulders down are very effective. And then the lower arm, very similar kind of work. General compression. The main muscle groups on the arm are posterior, posterolateral, and anterior. So you want to make sure you get all those muscle groups. We have the extensors here on the posterior side. Biggest muscle bellies on the arms are in the upper half of the arm, the proximal half of the arm. Distal half of the arm is long, skinny tendons. So this is the bulk of the muscle. Lateral side is the extensors. On the side, right here, we have brachioradialis. And anteriorly, we have the flexors. So you're going to want to make sure you focus in those three areas. Now, similarly, I could support his arm with my body so that I can work his arm well, or I can hold his arm. Depending on the height of their arm may lay in a spot that's not a good position to have their hand. But if he was a good height compared to me, that I could rest his arm, let's say on my hips with his permission, then I could use both arms. Is it okay if I rest my hand on your hips?
Yeah.
Let's do that backwards. You obviously don't want their hand where it would accidentally be touching your breast. And I'll show you something about this technique that the muscles do. When you pull the muscles, they're going to make the fingers automatically move. So you don't want to have his hands in a position where you're making his hands move and they accidentally touch you in a place they shouldn't, and then you think he's being creepy when you're really the one pulling his muscles. So this technique is going to move his hand, and so, I mean, you could try to even just put your hand on my leg again. The idea here is if you get more support behind his arm, you can apply more pressure and get more work done. The actual tool you're going to use is going to vary, again, depending on the size of them and you, your hands. You may sometimes get both hands. You see a nice pink response. That's bringing blood to the area. That's very good, pumping fresh blood into the area. That's going to bring in oxygen, bring in nutrients, flush the wastes out. And then pin and stretch for this area has different flavors. I'll show you different variations on the technique I'll show you. See, this is that muscle on the side, brachioradialis. I'm using a pincer grasp to lift up the belly of it. And I actually feel a tighter spot right here. So this is somewhere I would slow down, and I could just do that. Grab onto it and patiently wait for a few minutes and it will melt. And use general compression. If a muscle jumps out of your way and it's hard to grab it, you can use a couple different strategies. Sometimes you're approaching it with the size of a tool that's not so great. So let's say the muscle you are trying to grab is about this wide. If you use too small of a tool, you're going to kind of make it jump out of the way. So sometimes just using a tool that matches the shape of what's under your hands better will sort of trap and engage that muscle better. So that's kind of one strategy if a muscle's jumping out of your way, is to just change your tool you're using to match the shape of the muscle so that it is you're able to basically pin it and engage it better. Alright, so there's different methods of pin and stretch in this area. One of the ones that gets the whole area treated quickly and effectively is to basically grab around the whole arm at once. I'm going to remind you that the muscle belly is on the proximal half to 2/3. So if you grab up here, you're mostly grabbing tendons, it's not going to be so effective. But if you grab in the proximal half, what you're going to do is basically all the way around like you're a boa constrictor. Grab every muscle. And some of them are going to be tighter, some of them are going to be looser. So you're all the way around varying your grip. So the muscles that are tighter, you're really going to grab onto them. So parts of the circle are basically going to be squeezing harder than other parts of the circle. And you're contouring the shape of your hands to do this. When I get ready, I'm going to have Vlad make a fist with his wrist. Make a fist with your hand. So Vlad, go ahead and make a fist. Okay, and I want you to bend your wrist, please. Now take that fist and move it around in as big of a circle as possible. This should feel like a very good stretch with a slight amount of good pain that you can breathe through. Is it too intense? Okay. Does it feel good, or do you want me to press harder?
Feels good.
Okay. And keep making big circles. There you go. Switch in the other direction. I am pressing with quite a bit of resistance, so as he circles, he's really working through some spots. Excellent. Fantastic. And release. Good amount of softening, flush to the area. What you can do with a technique like that is get a lot of work done quickly. So now when I sink in there and reassess, I can find particular tight spots. See how that looks like it's jumping? Mm-hmm. We soften this big area quickly. So now I can feel isolated muscles that are still tight, that otherwise I might have to work in there for like 20 minutes till I even get to that. So now what I would do is I would take the spots that are still left and I can engage them. So I have a skinny muscle here. I'm going to mimic or imitate, match the shape of the muscle in there that's tight, sink into it, and I can be steady or I can give it a bit of a stretch. These muscles are going to go to his lateral epicondyle. So if you trace them up there, they're going to go to the bump right on the side of the arm. And when people get tennis elbow, it's lateral epicondylitis. It's these muscles right here pulling on that. So quite a few people, tennis players, golfers, computer operators, or people who work on a computer, that gets tight. Those of you who were watching closely, that part that was jumping, it's all soft and happy now. It's not jumping. So you can get a lot of work done quite quickly with that little combo. The video didn't really show you much with the hands, but even in a quick little routine, it's nice to include the hands. So you can do general pressing, squeezing for starters. I'll show you more specific techniques later. Opening the palm feels really good. So with our movements on computers, pencils, pretty much all of our activities have us kind of squeezing in like this. So opening up the palm and in the fascia right here feels nice to open that up. work out similar to the working with the foot, those trough spaces between the metacarpals. You can work through those valleys, and there will be tight spots and there will be loose spots. And when you feel those crunchy or thick or ropey spots, you want to hang out in there. I'm pulling his fingers out to kind of open his hand while I'm doing this. Some people will actually interlace their fingers while they hold the hand open. My hand size and his hand size don't work that well together for that technique, doing the whole hand opening at once, but I could sort of modify the technique where I'm basically holding the hand open, but in whatever way I can actually reach. So whether that's interlacing the fingers or holding it open more by the palm, you want to hold it open as you work between those spaces. Or you might be able to hold part of the hand open while you work with your other part of your hand. There's lots of other stuff we could do, but that's, a good way to start with the hand. Lengthen, bringing his shoulders down. And if you feel so inclined to shake it out again, that could be nice. And if you take a look from this view, possibly even from that view, you can see the difference in his shoulder. So
wow.
Yeah. The one that we didn't work with is elevated. It's obviously elevated, and it's actually rotated more. So.
Oh yeah.
And probably we'll be able to see the tension difference too. Oh yeah, this is cool. Serge, can you stop that a minute?